Today, American Sports Cavalcade presents from the Los Angeles County Fairplex in Pomona, 200-mile-an-hour NHRA Top Alcohol classes from the Chief Autoparts Winternationals. None of NHRA's 7 geographical divisions contain more blown alcohol dragsters and funny cars than Division 7, California, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Evans. You know, there's a good reason for that. If you grew up in this division, as I did, if it didn't have a blower on it, it wasn't a real race car. In fact, we were kind of arrogant about that. And that's one of the reasons we expect the action here at the opening race in Pomona to be just superb. The other reason is the cocky West Coasters, well, they're faced with invaders from all over the country. Here's the Top Alcohol Dragster qualifying. Marshall topping an injected fuel car was on top, but Marshall had problems before round number 1 yesterday, couldn't make the call, and that allowed the first alternate, Bernie Floor, to sneak into the show, and he was up against Donnell, who qualified a lot better than he did, Jeff Donnell. And I'll tell you what, this could have been a pretty good race had Bernie not risked everything on the starting line and rolled the dice. He was the winner of the Winternationals back in '92. There's a lot of credentials, but watch the lights. They tell the story. There's a red one over in Bernie's lane. But still, both drivers legged it on through, a 6:23 for Donnell and Bernie to 6:26. And Bob Fry, that sets up a decent second round.
Yeah, it really does. There's a kid coming out of the number 16 spot that advances. Taylor Payne and Highland also off of that side of the ladder. Dennis Allen, very strong. His best performance will take on Pedregon. Steve Faria, first in the 5s, gets it on with the little small block Chevrolet of Rick Santos. In alcohol funny car, RLH, that's Rick and Linda Henkelman. Very strong running machine. Far side of the racetrack, former Winternationals champ Lou Gasparelli, one of the strong runners that Steve mentioned at the top of the show, the alcohol cars from Southern California. His first big win right here in Pomona. Now watch Henkelman's car here in the near lane. Bang, big fire, and you don't normally see that in the alcohol categories. Louis had his hands full over there on the far side of the racetrack, manages to get the car stopped, and does advance into round number 2. Take another look at that, and Steve, you've seen a lot of these alcohol cars run. We're used to seeing flames come out of the fuel cars, not used to seeing this in the alky class.
But it can happen. That's why NHRA requires the same safety equipment.
In some other first-round action, Tony Bartone, the beast from the east, rolls to the starting line. Magnificent new race car. On the other side of the racetrack is going to be Dale Van Gundy. You might be saying, Dale who? Well, he, along with his partner, Keith Clark, got into the program when Mark Wozniacek, who had qualified, ran his car off the end of the track, couldn't answer the bell. It's kind of like throwing the lambs to slaughter here, you would think. Van Gundy against Bartone. But as they say, it ain't over till it's over, and there's a red light for Tony Bartone. It's over. Yo, Tony, what happened? You certainly didn't come all the way across the country to foul out in the first round.
Well, you know, I never dreamed I would do that, obviously, and, you know, I don't know how bad the light was, but I know I saw yellow. I guess I was in a little deep and let the clutch go, and I was red.
A 361, if that means anything.
Worse than I thought.
Tony's been here twice. Both times he has fouled out. That's good news for Dale. A lot of people figured Bartone had this first round in the bag, but nobody got around to your pit area and told you guys.
Well, yeah, but that's the sort of thing we thought he might have had in the bag, too. But we're real happy to be able to go to the second round. We were really going up just to try for a tune-up type run for Phoenix and see if we could improve. But we'll take it. We'll take anything we can. Better be lucky than good.
Dale Van Gundy, trying honesty. There's an interesting approach.
With round number 1 of Top Alcohol Funny Car in the books, here's the elimination ladder as we move on to round 2. Anderson and Weaver will match up. Austin and Selzy. On the other side, you got Miner, who continues to march on, going up against Lou Gasparelli. Van Gundy, who gets past Bartone, will match up against Penland.
Round number 2, Top Alcohol Dragster Racing, and this could be a beauty, Bob Fry.
Let me set the stage for you here, Steve. We talked about 30 cars trying to qualify. 16 made the field. 15 of those cars qualified in the 5-second range. That's the only car that did not run in the 5. Jeff Donnell trying to advance now into the semifinals. We saw his first round win as we take a look at the beautiful new machine. Gary Turner and Bobby Taylor. Steve, for all intents and purposes, this is a top fuel car. It's a brand new Brad Hadman car and has all the interesting little intricacies that the top fuel cars have on it.
And Bob, it's kind of ironic. Bobby Taylor in the near lane is driving a car that has absolutely no upholstery. That's just something else to burn in one of these machines. And I say ironic because he and his dad are in the upholstery business at Trim Shop in Costa Mesa, California. Kind of the old-fashioned kind of shop. Small, and they do great work at fair prices. Hard to find these days.
Well, there's a novel idea. Ralph, let me ask you, you see a lot of forms of drag racing. Here's a guy, Jeff Donnell, that's coming in and would appear to be overmatched in this. I mean, he's 0.2 of a second down to the Taylor-Turner combo. We saw 3 cars in the first round get blown out by the red light, Bartone, Ford, and Bushy. What's Jeff got to do here to try to stop Taylor?
Well, that's the great thing about this type of drag racing. It does not matter necessarily how good your equipment is. If you're a decent driver and you can pull a good light, maybe the other drivers tend to take you a little bit too lackadaisical. We saw Tony Bartone do that early on, and Bartone got bit by himself. So a driver like Jeff Donnell could stand a chance to upset Bobby Taylor.
As these cars stage, let's listen to them. They bring the RPM up very high, have to sidestep a pedal clutch and shift twice in 1,320 feet. Bobby Taylor left first, got there first, a 597, fairly conservative at 236 miles an hour. Donnell came to play, a 618 at 217. And Ralph, it didn't look like either driver, either crew chief had the cars really loaded.
No, in fact, it looks like Donnell was a little bit slower out of the box, but keep your eyes on Bobby Taylor. You see the tires haze up just a little bit, Steve. The rear end dances around on him a little bit. The car was not perfect, and I got to tell you, Bobby Taylor escaped round number 2.
Gary Turner is still trying to get the bugs out of a brand new race car, one of the longest wheelbases you'll find in the pits. Bob?
Brand new race car, new look, and pretty good results, Bobby. You got this thing into the semifinals. 97 probably isn't what you wanted, though.
Yeah, it shook pretty hard going out of low gear. I'm sure Gary and Sam will get a handle on it for the next round.
How much different is this car from the one you guys ran last year?
Well, it seems to be a lot better. I like it. We got a new crew chief, Gary. The guys are doing great. We'll see what we can do.
They got a new car and a great new look, too. A little reminiscent of some of the old Top Fuel cars. The paint job on this thing, it is magnificent.
It says Southern California all over it. All right, here's our next race in Top Alcohol Dragster. It is going to be Jay Payne against Sean Hyland. Now, here's a case of a car coming all the way down from the Oregon area to face off with one of the SoCal tire burners.
You talk about that Southern California heritage, Steve. Nothing the Division 6 guys, which is the northwestern part of the country, like to do better than to punch out one of those Southern California runners. This is the Pie Royal-sponsored machine of the Highland family. This is Sean, who picked up his first win out at Brainerd last year. They're running the wedge-type configuration engine. One of the very few that's running this year. Hit a very strong runner. Was not even the fastest kid in his family. His sister won a national event before he did. Jay Payne coming off the big win at the Winston Select Finals here last year. A competitor for the Winston Championship right up until that final race here at Pomona. The NHRA Winston season starts and ends here at the same racetrack. He would like to start off this year the same way he ended last year.
I'll tell you one thing he will do is have a lot of fun. Nobody has more fun drag racing, or in life maybe, than Jay Payne.
Payne, who was the 4th quickest qualifier, got past Larry Sutton in round 1 with a 591 to a 598. And Sean Hyland, who qualified 5th, got past Mike Bell from a 588 to a 621, 12th qualifier Mike Bell.
And Bob Fry, a lot of drivers look for a smooth run. Jay Payne likes an animal run where you got to steer it. Woohoo! Payne with the wheels in the air wins it at a 586, 238 to a very, very close 587 at 231. Thousandths of a second, the difference in victory. Watch Payne's car in the far lane. Got the wheels up, a lot of weight transfer, but when it settles back down, they lose a little bit of traction. That could have bit him, but he wins by 100th of a second. Funny cars of the alcohol variety coming into the staging area. Randy Anderson is the reigning champ. We'll have more of this kind of great NHRA Championship drag racing when we come back. Stay with us, everybody, from Pomona. We are back at Pomona, the Winternationals Sportsman Top Alcohol Dragster and Funny Car Competition. If you're a fan of the small block Chevrolet, and let's face it, who isn't? You only got one car to root for here. That's it. Rick Santos, they call it the small block from hell.
You know, Steve, he didn't qualify real well. He came in at the 11th spot. But in round number 1, when he went up against David Busby, he started to show a little bit more of the old Rick Santos style with a 582 at 234 plus miles an hour. And that really, I think, Bob Fry, shows that maybe Rick Santos is back.
Yeah, this is a tough car. You're not going to keep him down for long. By the way, Steve, I'm going to answer your question. Who is not a small block Chevy fan? Steve Faria, the guy over in the other lane. Steve's car qualified very well. Interesting runner. He was the first Top Alcohol dragster to run in the 5-second range. Very good, strong player here. The runner out of California, your quintessential Division 7 or Southern California runner. Steve, we won't see him on the tour much out of the West Coast events.
True story. Now, Rick Santos, this little car is so spindly and so light. That's why it's so quick. The rules allow it to be much lighter than the big Hemi cars, but it is always on the edge of shaking the tires violently. In fact, giving a pretty good headache to Rick Santos. They have to find the exact balance to win with this car.
He ran in the finals here last year at the Winston Select Finals against Dave Payne, and you're exactly right, Steve. It was tire shake to put him out right there. He shakes the tires a little bit right here. Faria will put him on the trailer.
Great drag race. Whoa, look at Santos all over the near lane, but he pulls it out. It picks up the pace doing it, a 5.79. You say only 2.28? Well, let me tell you, 2.28 with a small block, it is running on its tongue. Let's have another look, Ralph.
Steve Faria did everything he needed to do right off the bat with a 4.10 reaction time to a slower Rick Santos at the 4.28. But it was at the far end of the racetrack where Santos really got back into his regular stride. The 5.79 at 228 miles an hour was just too tough for the third quickest qualifier, Faria, posted a 5.91 at a faster 232 miles an hour.
If we take a look at Frank Pendragon, he's got to go against Dennis Allen. Now, Dennis Allen ran a 5.79 earlier. He's got that brand new PSI supercharger on the race car. That's the best that his car has ever run. If they can tame this supercharger here, Dennis Allen, his father, and the whole family, they're guys that used to run out of the salt flats back in the 1970s, as well as running top fuels. Could be a real factor here today. If they can't get it sorted out, they're going to be on the trailer.
There are two makes of these big screw-type superchargers, the Whipple Charger and the PSI, and right now there's a lot of debate over which is the best. The one thing I can tell you, you can buy a nice new car for the price of one of those blowers. Here we go. Pendragon, Dennis Allen. The near lane, Pendragon, the bad burnout didn't seem to hurt him a bit. Actually, the lap's time, not all that great, a 5.92, but he does advance to the final four, and after all, that's what it was all about.
Well, earlier on in the day, Dennis Allen had two of his best career runs ever, but you could see the tires shaking violently, the smoke pouring off the back end of the car. Dennis Allen's day is done. Frank Pendragon marches on. And you know, the Pendragon family has had great success here in alcohol classes at the Pomona Fairplex. In fact, Cruz won here in '89 in a Top Alcohol Dragster. Cruz came back in 1990 and won it all again in Top Alcohol Funny Cars. In the next round, Frank Pendragon will match up against Rick Santos and that small block Chevy. On the other side, it's Bobby Taylor going up against the guy who likes to make him run hard, Jay Payne.
And here is a beautiful blown alcohol funny car out of the state of Texas. This is Joe Penland, the Penland family, and they are very, very serious about alcohol funny car racing. They want a Winston championship this year.
They came off a Division 4 championship. That's down the southwestern part of the country. As we take a look at Dale Van Gundy and his partner Keith Clark as they burn out over there on the far side of the racetrack. Completely different approach right here, Steve. Van Gundy's car's got parts in it that he bought from Brad Anderson in 1983, not 93. Penland's car, look at that, no stickers on it, so he gives up a lot of the contingency money he could win from the sponsors here on the NHRA Winston Drag Racing Trail. All he wants to put on the side is Joe Penland and possibly the #1 if he can win the championship this year. This car's going to be a player.
You bet it is. He's a young guy with a lot of talent and appears to have a lot of good concentration on the starting line. Just welds the light.
Well, we've seen that here today, Steve, that being able to concentrate on the lights makes a huge difference. We talked about it earlier. Let's talk about it again. Tony Bartone had the problem with the lights, and, you know, you can't over-guess the lights in your competition. You got to get off the light before you can do anything.
And as that man, Steve Boggs, will tell you, how you stage these cars is critical. Tony Bartone said, I saw yellow and still got a red light. Maybe he was a few inches too deep. He's got about 9 to 11 inches to play with there. And Dale Van Gundy, the veteran from Anaheim, California, he will stage his car as shallow as possible to get maximum run out. Joe Penland, he's just going to plant it in there. When he sees yellow, he'll go and take the consequences.
This kind of kid used to hate school. Good-looking kid, got a lot of money, does a great job out there on the racetrack, you know, just kind of don't like him.
And then darn, he's nice.
Yeah. This ought to be an interesting matchup. Van Gundy, it will be interesting, Steve, to see if he tries to take a shot on the starting line. That might be his only hope here.
Yep.
Dead even leave. And you see the butterflies on the injector of Van Gundy close. He had big problems. Not for Penland, a 5.99, just real solid, 237 miles an hour.
Penland got past Dennis Taylor in round number 1, and here in round number 2, Dale Van Gundy's motor took him out of the running. You can see as they both get off the line, about dead even. Not much of a difference there, but just a few hundred feet down the racetrack, Dale Van Gundy's car gives up the chase. Penland moves on to the final 4, posting a 237-mile-an-hour pass with a 5.99.
Bob Fry's down at the other end to talk to the young Texan.
Joe, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. That helmet clashes terribly with his car. What's the deal?
We wanted to stand out a little bit more. The other car, the other car was real dark, and we got the white paint inside now, and now we got a little brighter helmet, and we can stand out a little bit.
There's actually like a game plan to this? It wasn't just like a mix and match?
Well, they never could see me inside there before.
It's a nice car, ran a 99 there. You think that'll keep you in the chase here the next couple of rounds?
It'll keep us here for a little bit. We hope to step up next round, though.
This is as good a looking and as good a running car as you're going to find in the field this year.
Obviously, he doesn't do his driver's suit according to the Garanimals.
Bob Fry, design critic. All right, you're looking at the alcohol funny car of Pat Austin, one of the winningest drivers in the history of NHRA drag racing, the Syntec car out of Tacoma, Washington. And he will be up against Gary Scelzi. Now, a lot of the racers would say, this is a slam dunk for Pat Austin. Believe me, it is not. They've been having a lot of problems with that car. They have not been winning with the frequency that they have in past years. Scelzi could be tough.
A couple of notes here, Steve. First of all, Scelzi has never lost at Austin. He is 4-0 against Austin. That's the Cashmill Syntec Red Wing Shoes Dynamax Tracker Boats car. We got to get all that in. They back him up. Now, before last year, Pat Austin from 1987 had never finished lower than 3rd in the Winston Points Championship. Gary Scelzi has won 5 national events, 3 of them in the alcohol dragster category. All 3 of those wins came right here in Pomona.
See the fuel injector on top of Scelzi's floor? Pretty conventional, the old buzzard catcher. And now look at the low-profile unit on the Pat Austin car. Well, earlier, Bob Fry had a chance to talk to Walt Austin about this kind of engineering.
Well, tell me about the new look on top of the supercharger there.
Well, that's a Gerardo injector. Don Gerardo made it several years ago, and we've had it for a couple years, and we just finally put it on. And the biggest reason is the vision thing and being able to get a big butterfly area and still not restrict his vision.
Whipple Charger makes an awful lot of power, but for that consistency still seems to be eluding you.
Well, it's been slipping away. We haven't been able to find it for a couple of years, and it's just it has a different torque curve than the other blowers, and it's very difficult to run and run fast. It's very easy to run and run in the middle of the field, but of course we're trying to win, and we're racing guys like Randy that are running very good, and we have to be able to utilize this horsepower, and we haven't been able to do that yet.
The Whipple and the PSI superchargers are a screw-type compressor. The technology is ancient, but never had been put into a race application before. And they rev extremely high. They take tremendous amount of punishment. They are almost service-free, but as I said before, they cost a lot of cash. Austin and Scelzi, what happened to Austin? Papa was right. They still haven't got the consistency on that car. Scelzi, a mediocre 608, 227 miles an hour, but he goes to the Final Four, and Patrick does not. Ralph, let's take one more look at this.
Steve, we've been talking about it all day today. Don't count out any of these guys, and Gary Scelzi is just another one who continues to march on. Scelzi had gotten through round number 1 by getting rid of Bob Sweet, and here Pat Austin helps him out with his motor letting go. Scelzi moves on to the Final Four with a decent run, a 6.086 at 227 miles an hour. Hey, who cares about the numbers? He's going to the Final Four. Bob's talking with him at the far end.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, going for the record, not the national record, not the ET record, but for the record, for how many cars can this guy drive?
We're going to try for just one today.
How'd you guys get hooked up together?
You know, it was just kind of by accident. They had called me to fill in for Tom Bristow, the ex-driver from last year, and we got along and things kind of just went my way, I guess.
Of course, they went that way in your round. They went your way in that round also. Pat had some problems. You win with an 08.
08, well, that's not really what we're looking for, but I think it smoked the tire pretty hard off the starting line. Let's just hope this Pomona luck keeps going my way.
It's Gary Selzy. If you can't find him at the track, look him up in the yellow pages under drivers, rented.
A hired gun. You know, if you're ever in a bad mood, well, I'll tell you where to go. Just stop by the J Paint Pit area, but don't have a thin skin. These guys will make you laugh. It just might be a little painful. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You want it, you got it on American Sports Cavalcade. More 200-plus mile-an-hour blown alcohol funny car competition from the Chief Autoparts Winternationals in Pomona, California. And there is one bad hombre out of Central California, Minor Brothers Racing. They've won a lot in various sportsman categories, and they're up against Lou Gasparelli, Bob, right?
Gasparelli, a two-time Winternationals champion, won his first event here in 1986, won again in 1993, and take on this very slick automobile here, the Minor Brothers. You start to get down to the short strokes, Ralph, and it's anybody's ballgame.
Well, in round number 1, Gasparelli got past Rick Henkelman. He ran a 592 with a 238-mile-an-hour pass. Minor put Brett Williamson on the trailer with a 589 pass at 238 miles an hour. So speed-wise, they're just about the same. But Steve, Minor was just a touch quicker, and he's going to need every bit of that to get past Gasparelli into the Final Four.
And Gasparelli has got a lot of fans in the stands. He's a veteran of those famous racetracks that no longer exist in Southern California. Lyons Dragster, Orange County International Raceway, Irwindale Raceway. Had the pleasure at one time or another of managing all three of those operations. And I can tell you that Lou Gasparelli was as strong then as he is now in whatever he cared to race from West Covina, California.
Lou finished number 9 in the points last year. Steve, this is a good field. We got 7 of the top 10 cars from last year here, including this one, a unique car that you had a chance to take a look at.
Virtually all of the alcohol cars have wheelie bars attached to the rear end. And their purpose, of course, is to keep the front end from coming too far off the ground. But often, if you really shock these wheelie bars hard, they push the front end down by lifting the rear end, unloading it, which causes a loss of traction and a bunch of other problems. Right next door, though, at the Minor Brothers Alcohol Funny Car Camp, they may have a better idea. Now, they've got a single wheelie bar. That's not the better idea. A lot of guys have that. But notice here, these top two tubes do attach to the rear end just like everybody else's. This bottom tube, though, goes way further forward in the chassis, clear up past the driver's seat. The idea being, if you shock this too hard, this bottom tube pulls the front end down without unloading the rear axle. Simple but very effective. From the Minor Brothers and chassis builder, Dave Uehara.
If nuts, bolts, and trick engineering are your game, boy, are the alcohol classes made for you. I don't think there's any other form of motorsports in the world where you can have as many varied combinations as you can here and still be competitive.
Far lane Gasparelli, near lane Minor, two of the Golden State's finest. Ho-ho! Gasparelli at a 596 to Minor's 601. Neither driver had a spectacular reaction time. In fact, they were both rather slow off the mark. Gasparelli had to come from behind to catch Minor.
Steve, we said that Minor was going to have to be quick if he wanted to beat Gasparelli. He wasn't real quick out of the box, but he was quick enough to get the jump on Gasparelli with a 476 reaction time to a slower 492. But it's down here at the far end of the racetrack where Lou Gasparelli got all the horses working. A 596, 239 miles an hour. That was all that Minor could stand.
Randy Anderson, of course, well, he's won untold amounts of national events, including the Winston Championship here last year to make it 2 in a row. He qualified number 1, pounded out a 586 at 240 to drop Wayne Stokel in round number 1. So Randy, from a racing family, in fact, Brad Anderson Components is just up the street in Ontario, California. He could have darn near driven this car from his home to the racetrack. John Weaver, well, he qualified number 8, ran a 604 to beat Mitch McDowell in round number 1. But there's more than just a race car behind the story of John Weaver.
Steve, if Randy Anderson gets help from his dad, John Weaver gets help from his mom. Mardell is a very vital part of this racing operation. She's certainly more than just window dressing, and John agrees.
She's a neat lady. I don't know, it's pretty touchy, for me anyway. She's our backbone of the crew, and she keeps everybody in line, and it's pretty tough.
and make some pretty good food, too, if you ever want to stop by. But what's she doing? She's not helping her son?
We laugh and say I'm not your typical grandmother because I drive a monster truck.
Tell us a little bit about it.
It's a 22,000-pound M4 armored personnel carrier. That the bottom part of it is a tank and the top part of it's a 77 Chevrolet pickup.
How would you like to be her daughter-in-law? If she got mad at you, she'd just come over and crush your house.
You want to stay on the good side of Mardell Weaver. John was part of probably the most unlikely Quinella we've had here at Pomona last year, Steve. He won in Top Alcohol Funny Car, and John Shoemaker won in Top Alcohol Dragster.
Randy Anderson looking mighty tough, though, coming out of that number 1 hole. I think Weaver is going to need to leave on him. Ooh. Weaver gets out of the groove. Sorry, Mardell, but Mr. Anderson is going to the Final 4 at 586. Another 240-mile-an-hour run. That is a ride in an alcohol funny car.
You want to see the best car in Top Alcohol Funny Car, just watch the car in the near lane. Look how quick Randy Anderson is out of the box, and then he just accelerates away from John Weaver. Anderson was quicker out of the box with a 462 to a 470. He was quicker at the far end of the racetrack, a 586 to a 607, and the top speed at 240-mile-an-hour pass. Just too awesome.
So that sets up the Final 4, as we like to call it. It'll be Joe Penland over Lou Gasparelli. Luigi, you got lane choice, bud. The other half has Randy Anderson and Gary Selsey, and you can guess who's got the lane choice. And right now, Bobby Taylor is trying to get a lease on the LA County Fairplex and pick up this Winternationals win in the Gary Turner car. He's going to be up against Jay Payne, and I don't know, this could be a good one, Bob Fry.
Steve, we have seen a lot of drivers foul out in this race. Let me tell you statistically, the Jay Payne last year for all the alcohol dragsters in the country averaged the quickest elapsed time in the field. Conversely, he was number 10 in reaction time. In drag racing, if you're too quick, you foul out. If you're too late, you're never going to catch the guy at the other end of the racetrack. Now, Taylor's about a 1/10 of a second down in performance to Jay Payne, 90s to 80s, basically rounding them out. If Taylor gets off the starting line here first, it could be trouble for Jay Payne. Conversely, if Jay leaves first, you can kiss it goodbye for Bobby Taylor.
One of the reasons Bobby Taylor is in that Gary Turner race car is because of his reaction times. Turner knows how important that is. Bobby Taylor doesn't have a dime invested in that car. In fact, he gets paid a modest sum to drive it.
Both of these drivers have been quicker than their competitors in reaction time, but Bobby Taylor has been quicker than Jay Payne. In fact, Taylor ran a 470 reaction line. Payne, a little bit slower with a 487. There's Gary Turner. He owns that car, a bicycle magnet in his own right. In fact, Bobby Taylor was the crew chief on this car when Cruz Petragon won here in Pomona.
You know, and after the first round, I did something really we have never done before. I took a look at alcohol dragster performance all the way down the racetrack. Blown alcohol dragsters are not easy to drive. In fact, they're one of the real challenges in drag racing. First of all, going into that final staging beam, the driver has to bring the engine RPMs up to where they're just screaming. Sounds like the engine's going to leave the car. Once staged and the tree is activated, he dumps the clutch, then has to make 2 gear changes, all the while trying to keep it off the wall and from crossing the center line. They shake, they rattle, they occasionally roll. They get it figured out, and they're a kick in the butt to drive. This was Jay's second run victory. We're going to slow it down for you, and we've got some computer numbers from him. Listen to this. He hits 100 miles an hour in 60 feet, less than 1 second. Now, the maximum G's he feels in the cockpit happen at the top of low gear. That's 3.18 G's at 1.77 seconds into the run. Now, the G's level off a little bit at the top of second gear to 2.63. And at the 1/8 of the mile, listen to the speed, 193 miles an hour at half track. At the finish line, well, the G-force not much, 0.75. That's plus G's. But when he hits the parachute with 1 chute, it instantly goes to minus 1.10. Use 2 chutes, you double that, so you could have a negative G over 3 in a heartbeat. And guys, I think the most impressive number there of all is that half-track speed of 193 miles an hour. That means his car only gains about 44 miles an hour the second 1/8 of a mile.
Steve, that's kind of a neat look at these race cars. You never really think of them running almost 200 miles an hour to the 1/8 of a mile.
That's why I did the piece, Bob. All right, we've talked about reaction time a great deal with this pair. Don't disappoint us, boys. Jay Payne in the far lane. Bobby Taylor, near lane. It is 1 on a hole shot. Bobby Taylor's 590, P.J. Payne's 589. He had a slower speed at 236, but Payne couldn't catch him, and Payne cannot stop his car. Pomona, not the longest raceway on the circuit, but everything's okay. He's right side up. Gary Turner is upside down over going to the finals.
Steve, you said it just before the run. It was going to come down to reaction time. The best Taylor's run already in the day was a 470 reaction time of 462 against Jay Payne. It's just what he needed. The quickness of this car and the speed of this car were not really the numbers he wanted to put Payne away, but the reaction time made the difference. A 590, 236, just good enough.
In a drag race, it's not over just because you've crossed the finish line, especially not here at Pomona. You know, we hear the drivers talk about tire shake. Really, it's more car shake. It's where the car gets kind of unbalanced, can't make enough power to get up on the tire so it turns kind of square. Well, a big, strong car like Frank Pedregon's there, maybe you can drive through that shake. In a little, light, spindly car like this one, you can't do it. If it starts to shake, you're beat.
Steve, we talked about Jay Payne, how he was #1 in ET and down the ladder a bit in reaction time. This small block Chevrolet, as we told you earlier, does not run the big speeds. He cannot run the mile per hour that Frank Pendergon and Jerry Mattern's car can do. He is, however, lightning quick off the starting line. In the top 3 of reaction time, couple that with a very strong elapsed time, that's the winning success to the small block Chevy.
And they run low gears in the transmission and the rear end. They really scream this little baby. They have to. It's the only hope it's got. Oh, another tremendous alcohol drag race. Santos won it, 595. Pedregon lost it, 595. The difference was 1/100th of a second, less than 100th in reaction time for Santos.
Earlier in the day, Rick Santos had been a lot quicker out of the box than the 446 he had here. But Pedregon posted a 450 reaction time, so Santos had just enough to get out of the box first. At the far end of the racetrack, Pedregon was pedaling pretty hard, running a 595, the 235-mile-an-hour run. The 595 at 205 for Rick Santos was just enough with the margin of victory.
5/1000ths of a second, even closer than the Taylor Payne race. What's amazing, Santos only ran 205 miles an hour. He really shouldn't have won with that slowest speed. But here's the finals. Rick Santos against Bobby Taylor. Bobby Taylor has the lane choice. You'll like that a lot. Bob Fry?
Well, the good news is that you won. The bad news is 95. That's not going to strike fear in their hearts.
Well, the clutch pack in the transmission seemed to, I was backing up when I knocked it out of gear for below. The clutch pack had no pressure for the transmission. So I was getting a little worried, and then down here on the big end, she just quit running. So I had to shove the clutch in and hope he didn't go by me.
Should be a pretty fun matchup here. Boy, Taylor's running well.
Oh, yeah, it's all fun. You know, we can just get her going down the track. We'll have a good race.
You thinking championships yet?
See, it's too soon to tell.
Bet me.
Yeah, bet me. There'll be a lot of work in that camp. They'll have the transmissions and the clutch out of that car. You can bet on it. Stay with us. We got funny cars coming your way. The Final Four when we come back to Pomona, California. In fact, they're already headed your way. We're back at Pomona and talk about good help. That is Norm Drazy, the inventor of the PSI Supercharger, giving some top-up information to Rick Santos before the Top Alcohol Dragster final round. Right now, we have got the Final Four in Alcohol Funny Car, and here is Lou Gasparelli, hometown favorite, and he will be up against Bob Fry's favorite car, Joe Penland.
Yeah, love the car, hate the kid. I'm only kidding, Joe. The family comes out of Nederland, Texas, won the Division 4 battles last year, and they're going to try to test their mettle on the National Event Trail this year, Steve. It's a carbon copy of Bob Newberry's car. Newberry, the former Winston champ, former Winternationals champ. And take a look at that big engine and blower and all that stuff sticking out of that car. What is that, Steve?
The first thing a driver notices when he puts one of these Whipple superchargers on an alcohol dragster is, boy, this baby's got some power. The first thing he notices with an alcohol funny car is, I can't see. My cameraman, Jeff Kilde, is in the seat usually occupied by Lou Gasparelli, and now you see what Lou doesn't see. Lou, that's got to be some kind of a problem.
It is. You can't see anything over the top at all, Steve, but if you look down the sides here, there's not really much of a problem at all.
What about seeing the Christmas tree?
The Christmas tree isn't a problem. Again, you just look out the side.
Side vision now becomes very important, though.
Absolutely. That really is your only vision.
Is it worth not seeing to have this much power?
Absolutely.
Folks, they will sacrifice just about anything to go quick in this sport.
I think it was pretty neat. You didn't get a chance to see the yellow pages, but Louis got to sit on to reach the pedals there.
So Louis really doesn't see the finish line. He sees the center line and the wall on the left-hand side. He just kind of sights along that wall. No, thank you.
Steve, as we look in at Lou Gasparella, we had some great shots there from cameraman Jeff Kelly inside the race car. Is he the same cameraman that runs along the side of the car and gives us the shots down track?
Jeffy does it all. No, interesting in drag racing. Let's take NASCAR, for example. A Busch Grand National car is supposed to be easier to drive than a Winston Cup car. That trains you for the step up. An Indy Light, easier to drive than an Indy car. A Formula 3000, easier to drive than a Formula 1, right? In drag racing, it's not true. These cars are harder to drive, in my opinion, than what they call the step up to the nitro cars. The nitro cars are high gear only, centrifugal clutch. I mean, you got to stand 300-mile-an-hour speeds in 4 seconds. But as far as sheer driving and paying attention, these are the toughest in all of NHRA drag racing. One goes to the final. Loser leaves the stage. And Bob Fry can drool over the Penland car one more round as he goes to the final with a 594 at a nice speed, 238 miles an hour. I'll tell you, they've got everything it takes, including good-looking uniforms.
Well, they both got off the line pretty quick, Steve. A 470 to a 469. Penland a little bit slower. But at the far end of the racetrack, Penland was up on top of it a lot better than was Lou Gasparelli. A 594 to a slower 596. The mile an hour, just about the same. Penland with a 238 mile an hour pass was enough to beat the 239 mile an hour effort of Lou Gasparelli. Steve Boggs, who tunes the car for Penland, was he ever excited about the fact that they're going to the final round? Look at him jumping up and down and back up at the staging area. Give you an idea just how impressive it is to put away Lou Gasparelli. A lot of enthusiasm out of Boggs. And this young man standing by Bob Fry.
Well, this would be a pretty good way to start the season, wouldn't it?
Not too bad. A little bit better than we expected. We kind of stumbled around there a little bit in the beginning of qualifying, but we kind of come around.
Yeah, 94 wasn't too bad. You think 94 is going to be able to get you into the winner's circle in the next round?
94 is good, but I think we have to step a little bit more for Randy.
Tell us about the connection between you guys and Steve Boggs.
Steve tunes for me and Tony Bartone, and he does a great job for both of us. He's real fair about the whole deal, and everybody really gets along real well.
Did I mention you about that helmet? Oh, yeah, we did that last round.
And moments ago, Mr. Boggs invented the Boggs Boogie on the starting line. He'll get a lot of teasing about that. Now, who is going to race Mr. Penland in the final? Will it be the two-time Winston champion, Mr. Anderson, Randy, first name, or will it be Gary Salzi in a lemon and fur car, a team that's been around Southern California drag racing a long time?
If you listen closely to that interview, Joe Penland thinks he's going to have to run Randy Anderson.
And Randy's sister, Shelley, holds the top fuel national record. Any rivalry?
I think there was some at one time. We both worked on Dad's car, but no, we've each got our own race car. We run different classes, and I mean, we have the same goals, and you know, I'm a big fan of hers, and she works on my car a lot and helps me. I don't think there's been too many runs this year I've made, if any, that she hasn't been up on the starting line and helped me, and we support each other real well.
It's a little different. The teams in the alcohol classes all seem to have the drivers also working on the car. You do all the maintenance, or a lot of the maintenance on this car. Shelley in the top fuel car, like a lot of the top fuel drivers, or some, basically is the driver. But you don't mind getting in here and getting dirty.
No, not really. I think I enjoy the mechanical aspect more than the driving, to be quite honest. I think it's a bigger challenge to make the thing run and be, you know, the top car. That's a bigger challenge than driving, without a doubt.
Does the family put any pressure on you to win, or the fact that you have this reputation of the family behind you, do you feel extra pressure to win?
No, not really. You know, in fact, Dad, you know, when I first started driving a couple years ago, put very little pressure on me. He just told me to take it slow, do what I'm comfortable. If I didn't win, he didn't, you know, seem to be too discouraged. He knew I was going to take some bumps and bruises on the way to the top, and I did take them, and took them quite hard, actually, and, you know, I kind of struggled my way to the top, and I'm having a lot of fun right now.
Well, Brad Anderson had another rule in that house. If you're going to race my cars, you're going to go to school, you're going to get smart. Both Shelley and Brandy, college graduates who right now are professional racers, and they conduct themselves very, very well.
How'd you like to be a guy with 2 Winston championships, and you're not even the winningest driver in your own family? His dad, Brad, won 3 times.
If there is any pressure put on Randy Anderson, I think it's by himself. We've seen a lot over the last couple of years where Randy Anderson can almost psych himself out of a race because he tries so hard to win.
Absolutely, and that shows occasionally in a bad reaction time. He had a spell of those, but he's gotten over it. Oh, Selsey wants him bad. Look at Selsey. Whoa! Sorry. Anderson, a 5:88. His sister smiles and walks away. And that is his slowest elapsed time of eliminations. He's been in the 80s every round, but not an 88. He won't like that.
Well, you said it, Steve. Gary Selsey came ready to try to knock off Randy Anderson, and he was a lot quicker out of the box. But the 588 of Randy Anderson was just too tough for Gary Selsey to match. Only a 603 for Gary Selsey. That's not going to cut it when you got to go up against a reigning champion like Randy Anderson. Anderson will have the lane choice, and Penland's going to need a solid 580 run.
Randy, you think you had a concerned look on your face last round. You slowed all the way to a 588 this round. What's the matter with this thing?
Well, you know, we're playing it one round at a time. And again, I thought I'd run a little better than that. You know, we run the 86 and changed nothing. I just thought I'd drive it a little harder and it'd pick up. But, you know, the first 2 rounds today, it hasn't really responded. And we got Joe Penland. He stepped up a little bit. We're going to have to get after it now.
It's been a while since anybody's beaten you here at this racetrack.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, if you remember and you look back the last 2-3 years, this is an upset track in the final round, and nobody knows that more than Pat Austin. I'm very aware of that, so it's in the back of my mind, Bob.
Now, this is a cubic inch to weight basis here, this category. The S&S Automotive Machine, small block Chevrolet, they're actually a smaller motor, Steve, than what they ran last year. The car's about 70 pounds lighter than what we saw here at the Winston Select Finals a few months ago.
Well, I think NHRA whacked them a little bit on the weight break. Maybe they were a little bit too quick. And there's lots of different formulas for the kind of cars you want to run here. But we will predict that someday, maybe even this year, somebody's going to get a handle on an injected nitro car in this class and go so quick they can hang a Buick on the front axle and wouldn't slow them down enough.
With all the different engine combinations and the weight variances in this class, you would think that injected nitro configuration would be the one to choose.
It is by a lot of drivers. The problem is inconsistency. The drop cylinders, it loses hundreds of horsepower. Where with the supercharger in the car, as John Ford says, it tends to keep the candles lit. These cars really don't drop cylinders the way a nitro car does.
Plus, it goes back to what Steve said at the top of the show here in Southern California. If it ain't got a blower, it's not a race car. Final round.
Even though Santos had a huge advantage off the starting line, Bobby Taylor thunders by for Gary Turner, 586, 237 miles an hour. Santos gets the speed back up to 228, but the elapsed time falls off to a 6:09.
Boy, Rick Santos sure was quick out of the box with 4:48 compared to Bobby Taylor, but the problem was the wheel spin on the car. He just wasn't able to get it down to the far end of the racetrack as quickly as he needed to. He hit it with a 6:09, nowhere near good enough to the 586 of Bobby Taylor. 237 miles an hour for Bobby Taylor. A very fine effort by Bobby Taylor. Steve's with him at the far end of the racetrack.
Just the other day, I took my Mustang convertible into this guy's upholstery shop in Costa Mesa, got a new back window. Didn't know we'd be talking here, the champ.
Yeah, well, it's great to be talking to you, Steve. Gary, Sam, my whole crew, my mom and dad, my wife, everybody did a super job this weekend. We got a brand new car. It all come together, and we won a national event. All right.
Any butterflies when you rolled up there?
No, I thought I was going to throw up.
They want to see the alcohol final round between Joe Penland, the gang out of Texas, and Randy Anderson, the gang from just down the street.
Well, we mentioned it's a family operation for Randy Anderson. There's his dad, Brad, 3-time Winston champ, many times winner right here at Pomona. Penland gang, also a family operation. Their dad is with him here this weekend. So is his brother. That was his brother directing the car back on the starting line. These two guys have met twice before in the finals, Ralph, and they have split. Randy took out Penland last year at Houston. Penland took out Randy at Denver last year. This is the rubber match.
Well, you know, the thing I start thinking about again here, Bob, is we saw Randy when he climbed out of the car, how tense he was, how nervous he was. He couldn't wait to get back and get working on the car. Let's see if he found the problem.
Good old drag race, good old Anderson. Horsepower at the top end, 582 for Randy, 242 miles per hour to get the win. That even brings a smile to Brad's face. You don't see that very often. Anderson, 582. Joe Penland, a game effort at 590, but Randy continues pounding out those 580s. Ralph, that's a tough set of numbers to beat.
Oh, it's almost impossible, Bob, and he saved the best run of the day for the finals. Penland came loaded. He ran a 590, but that 582 of Randy Anderson's was just way too much for him to handle. And 242 miles an hour at the far end of the racetrack, where Steve Evans is with our winner.
Talk about saving the best for last, 582.
Yeah, well, you know, Steve, when the sun goes down here, this place can be pretty awesome. We found that out at the Winston Finals. When the sun wasn't out, this track was one of the best, and we knew to get better. We turned the wick up a little bit, and 82.
As you look at all the names that made it possible, we hope you enjoyed the pavement pounding from Pomona. For Bob Fry and Ralph Shaheen, I'm Steve Evans. Keep watching on American Sports Cavalcade for more great NHRA Championship drag racing as we go through the 1995 season.